Hello and welcome to our tutorial. So in this tutorial we're going to look at some kind of basic functions in a computer game. The thing we're going to do is we're going to create a door that can open and close, and we're going to have our character trigger that, that door opening or closing. So let's have a look at how we might do that. So at the moment we've got our character here, and the character can fall to our platform and stays on the platform, and then we can walk off the platform, and we can walk the other way, and we have our idle cycle, etc. Okay, so that's how the game plays. So let's take our platform here. It's got a box collider, it's got an animator on it, with an animator controller. So let's think about how we made that and make a new one. So in sprites here, we've got our sprite sheet. So over here, I think we went right click and we went 2D object sprite. So we created a new sprite, and in here we selected that guy. So there's my new sprite. You can see the dot here. And what we'll do is we'll scale this up on vertical Y. Oops. And we'll call this door. Okay. So this is going to be my door, and as I look at it here, it's got some weird positions, particularly on Z. So say 0 here, and now I can see it. I'm going to take my player, and I'm just going to move my player off here to the left. And I'm going to take my door. Now I know this doesn't look like a door, so it's just meant to be a placeholder. So this is going to be my door. Now I'm going to add a component to the door. So physics 2D, and we'll add a box collider. Okay, so when I press play now, now I may be able to jump over this because it may not be high enough, but let's not jump, let's just see the physics. So I'm walking forward and I can't go any further. So I want the door to open and to be able to walk through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another object. I'm going to add it in here in front of the door, and I'm going to get that to trigger this animation. So let's do that. So with my door selected, I'm going to go to Window, Animation, and Animation. So I need two animations, bizarrely, on this. The first one is a static animation of it not moving. So I'm going to go Create, and then in Animations, I'm going to call this, so door 1, actually we'll call this door 1 Open. And we'll animate it opening. And if you remember, we did this before. We changed the property, and it's a transform property, and its position that we want to add in. So I've got a keyframe on its position, which is where it is here, and then we can zoom out a bit, and we'll say maybe after 3 seconds. So we'll go to here, and there we go. We'll move its position. We'll move it up to there. And oops, so we move it up to there, and then we add in a keyframe. Okay, and that's the animation. Okay, very good. And now I need a second animation. So I'm going to create a new animation, and we're going to call this door 1. I'm going to call it closed. Now, why do we need two animations? Well, we need two animations because we want it to be able to play this animation where it doesn't go anywhere, and then transition to the animation where it goes somewhere. Okay, so that's all we need this for. Now let's go to my animator here and have a look here. So we want it to start with the door closed, so I'm going to make that our default. And then we're going to transition here, make transition. We're not going to close the door. We can maybe in class you can sort of elaborate on this and have the door close behind me. So I'm going to create a parameter which is going to be Boolean, and it's going to be, we're going to call it in all smalls, we're going to call it open. And over here we're going to say when open is true, play the open animation. Okay, and we'll turn off has exit time. Okay, so let's do that. So we'll press play, and I can walk over here, and my door is closed, and I can't go through it. and then I walk away, and then up here I'm going to click on this. So we've got our door open. Now you can see we've got instantly a problem. So it has played the animation, but it plays it on a loop. So we don't want that to happen. So let's have a look at this door animation here. You can see when I select it, it's got loop time turned on. So let's turn that off and try it again. So we press play, and we're playing doors closed. We're going to turn on our parameter, and it's going to play, and then it's going to stay there. Now it looks like it's playing it over and over again, but you can see down here the loop is finished, so it's not playing. So this state is active, but the animation is not playing. So if I click back down here, I am free to walk beneath that door. Okay, so we have a door that has physics. It stops us walking through, and we have a method here of opening that door. So how do we trigger that? Well, there's a number of ways to trigger it. We could calculate a distance. We could say when the player is a certain distance from the door, open the door. We could have, when a certain amount of time goes by, open the door. There's an endless number of inputs. But what we're going to look at in this one is we're going to look at a trigger. So a physical object that the character will interact with, will collide with, that's invisible to the player, and when the character collides with that object, the door opens. So let's do that. So I'm going to take my door here, I'm going to right click beside it and go make a new sprite. And there's no sprite added here. I'm going to add my physics box collider, and actually let's add our sprite first, and there we go. So there's our sprite. Again, we've got a ridiculous value on Z, so I've got my dot, and let's scale it on Y and on X, and then we'll position that there. So we're going to say, when I collide with this, open the door. But what we're going to do is we're going to turn that off. Now when I click on the box collider, actually let me delete that and add it again. Physics 2D box collider. Okay. So my box collider now, when I put it on originally, it was the same size as the sprite. So this is my box collider. So, but I can't see the sprite. So the sprite is there, but I've just turned it off, so it's not being rendered. But the collision is still active. So this object here has collision. Now, this poses a problem to us. So if I press play now, my player cannot see it, but it has physics. I cannot proceed. So the way to fix that is to turn on this option here in the collider, is trigger. So what does that mean? Well, that means that this object here has physics in the sense that it will register the collision, but objects can pass through it, unlike our door. So I can pass through this object, so the player will never know it's there. It's an invisible object. But we can register that collision and then manipulate it. So we'll call this door trigger. Okay, so now let's create a script. So platform control, I don't think we have anything in there, so we'll just delete that. So I'm going to create a new script, and this new script is going to be C#, and we're going to call this door control. Okay, and then I'm going to double click on this and open up Visual Studio, which will probably take 45 minutes. So what am I going to do with this script? Well, what we want to do is we want to use a command or like a function that acknowledges there's collision but doesn't use on collision, because we're not having a collision because there's no physics or there's no ramifications of the collision. So Unity has built into it its own version of that. So we go void on trigger enter 2D. And you can see, because it's a very helpful piece of software, it's added in this collider 2D collision. Okay. Now, if we look at our player control here, we have conditioned something on it having a tag. So let's do that. I'm going to go Control C here and go over to my door control and go Control V. But I'm going to replace this with player. Now, why am I doing that? Why am I tagging player? And the reason I'm doing that is quite simple. Sorry, that shouldn't be there. That should be that. The reason I'm doing that is, I'll just skip back in here and take my player and tag it player with a capital P. Let's say I was firing a gun. If I fired a gun as a bullet, and if this bullet has physics, let's say I have a grenade launcher or something, so I can see the bullet moving. So if something else collides with this invisible door trigger, it'll open the door. So we only want it to open when the player walks through. Or if I had a non-player character that was like on a patrol, we don't want this door to open when it hits this invisible trigger, only when the player hits it. Okay. Now you may have a different design decision that you've made. So now what do I want to do? I want to say so on trigger enter, so send a message then to the object, this object here I've collided with. So so if collision.gameObject .tag equals player, then we want to say collision dot GameObject dot send message. Okay, and the message that we want to send is I don't know, open the door. Okay, so in fact, actually that's not true. That's not what we want to do at all. So let me rethink that. So we don't want to send the message. So okay, so this script, actually let's rewind a little bit. This script is going to go onto the door trigger. So I'm saying if the object that collides with the door trigger has the tag player, then send a message. But we don't want to send it to ourselves. That's what this would be. Or we don't want to send it to the player. We want to send it to the door. So door.gameObject.sendMessage, open the door. But what is door? So we need to reference that up here. So we want to make a public game object, and it's going to be called door. Okay. And then we're going to have to drop that in the inspector in here. So there's our variable, and we're going to say, so if something this is on the trigger, if something collides with me with the tag player, send the message to the door saying open the door. Okay, we can delete all this. That is our script. So we'll save that. Okay, and if we have any compilers, if I got that totally wrong, it'll give me an error here. So that's fine. So now when we collide with this, if we drag and drop the script onto it, okay, so it's saying what object do you want to send the message to? Well, we want to send the message to the door. Okay, so what do we do now? So we've got a scenario where when I collide here, I send the message to the door. So now I need to make a new script that goes on the door that responds to that message. So we'll call this door respond. Okay, and I'm sure I could think of a much better name for that script. So we had gotten rid of that one. So let's have a think about what we've done here. So we're sending a message called open the door, and now I've got my door respond here. So I don't need void update and I don't need void start. So I'm just going to delete all of them. So I've got nothing in my script. Void open the door. Okay, so how messages work in Unity is when I send this message, that message become like to get the listening object to hear that message, we need to have a function with the same name as the message, and then whatever's in this function it'll run, and it'll only run this when it receives the message. So void open the door, what do we want it to do? Well, if you remember here, we had to cache the animator because we want to access an animator controller. So that goes up here. And we'll call it here, we'll call it, I know, oops. We'll call it, say, door control. No, it's not going to let me call that because I've got a script called door control with an S, door controls. Okay, so we've got animator door controls, and then if you remember here, after we've done that, we've got this one here. So we'll Control C, we'll copy that and paste that in here. Now, only this time it's not called player 1C, it's called this here. So Control C, Control V, and then if we, well, let's save this, but it's going to give me probably a small compile error here. If we look at the door and we look at its animator controller, its parameter was called open. So we want to set open to be true. Okay. And we'll go save all. And we're going to take that script there, the door respond, and put that on the door. Okay, and now it's asking me for the animator. So this is the door animator. And if you remember, we had a problem dragging and dropping that before, so we had to click here and select the door. So the door animator is on it now. Okay, so let's just walk through what we've got. So we've got a player with the tag player. When it collides with this invisible trigger, there is no physics it can walk through, but when it collides, on enter, it sends a message to the door, and when the door receives the message, it should activate the animation that opens the door. So let's see if all of those things I've said make any sense in the practical application of a game. So I'm standing here, the door is closed, and the door has opened, and now I can proceed. So we're going to do this in class, and what I'm hoping we also do is that you place another trigger on this side, and then you close the door. So that might require a second animation and maybe another parameter here so that the transition goes back. Now we'd have to be careful doing that because so you don't want it to jump to the static position. But we'll explore that in class. We don't have this, so if I walk back this way and I trigger it again, it'll stay open. So this will stay open forever. We don't have a on collision exit. So that is another way, or on trigger exit. So we could take this object here. If I just added the controller here, or the collider, I could have that span it. So when I walk in here on trigger enter, it opens it, and then on trigger exit in the same script, it tells it to close. So there's like a number of ways to get this to work. Now we'll be looking at other methods of sending messages. There's broadcasting messages. We can find objects. Some of them are far less efficient than others. We'll look at static variables and different ways to communicate between objects and scripts. But this is just one way to do it. So to have on trigger enter send message, and then over here we receive the message by running the function. Okay, so we will leave it there for now.